hey, listen, Lightning in a Box is about transitioning from classic to Lightning and realizing the full value from near 100% adoption of that transformation. So remember Y2K? It was a compelling event that took place back in 2000, technically 1999. And for those of you that were too young to have lived through the hysteria that this event caused in business, basically Y2K and other events like this taught us a couple of things. And it's that when demand skyrockets and resources are constrained, prices go up and the quality goes down. So the question is not if, but when. Essentially, the question that you need to answer is, do you want to make this transition on your timeline or on somebody else's deadline? So Lightning in the Box, basically think of it this way. If you had good adoption in Salesforce Classic, you want to follow a similar format. However, if Salesforce Classic was not adopted well, then this is your chance to do it right with Lightning and realize the full value of your investment in Salesforce. Doing it right means following a successful blueprint for adoption. And we refer to that blueprint as Lightning Adoption in a Box. So what's in the box? Well, before we talk about what's in the box, let's get real about some statistics that we need to be aware of to make sure that we don't become victims of those statistics. The first is a survey by McKinsey of over 1,700 executives around global transformation. And the question that was asked was about how do you beat the transformation odds? The findings of that survey tell us that over 74% of transformations are not successful. Now that's interesting since most of these transformations have millions of dollars invested in them and they're performed by the smartest people leading them. So why in the world would that many result in unsuccessful transformation? Well, that's part of what we're going to cover today. And we're going to look to ensure that it doesn't occur in your transformation. So the second thing to consider is about the statistics is the adoption of CRM or customer relationship management tools has actually gotten worse, not better. So again, that question, if we've learned so much and things have gotten so much better, why would adoption have gotten worse? And that's another question that we're going to tackle here today. So the first thing to understand is that there's some major barriers to adoption. These are not going to be the only ones that we discuss, but these are certainly the top four based on our experience of hundreds of successful implementations of Salesforce and successfully driving the adoption that you're looking for. So the first one is really this idea of too much complexity and too low value for the users. So part of your transformation has to address these two issues to ensure that design and implementation has the appropriate amount of simplicity in user experience while creating great value for the users. The second component is really the new technology adoption. Anytime you change technology, different people are going to respond differently, and you need to be prepared to address this. And the third topic is the topic of training. Traditional training simply doesn't work. Most people forget 50% of everything they've learned within a day. And within 2 weeks, they retain little to nothing of what they've learned. So the key is not training, which is important, but it's repetition and coaching over time. So the fourth big barrier is company culture and individual habits. Think for just a second about your sales organization. Think about the way that the culture and the habits have been formed over time and how long it's taken. And now what you're asking them to do in making a transformation is try to get everybody aligned around the same culture and the same habits. Now, it may or may not be easy, but it's definitely one of those critical factors that we have to consider and we have to manage. So Lightning in a Box, what's the blueprint for that? Well, essentially, there's 4 components to Lightning Adoption Blueprint. In order to get really good adoption, you have to design adoption into the solution. Then what you need to do is build and ensure that you enable that design in your build. The adoption doesn't just happen. You have to have a good adoption plan. And when this happens, you realize the value from your investment. So let's just take each of these one at a time and look at what's involved. The first component is design. And again, adoption must be designed in or it will not be achieved. Often the design doesn't consider all the key things that are necessary to drive good adoption. Things like aligning goals, objectives, KPI metrics to the business. Designing an end-to-end sales process that enables the achievement of those goals and objectives and KPIs. And then finally, designing the Salesforce architecture to support end-to-end process to help you achieve those goals, objectives, and metrics. That's easier said than done, but most people unfortunately skip this step. It's like building a skyscraper and skipping the step of the architecture and the design of the solution before you actually start building. So the second component is the build itself. Adoption requires that you build, the build enables the design and creates a simple, valuable user experience. You want to build the Salesforce core Lightning to enable all of your best practices, ensure you have KPIs for success that are also built in, and make sure that you've got the right leaderboards, dashboards, reports, the things that are going to help you in execution of your best practices and give you the ability to measure and track that progress. So the last piece here is adopt. Adoption, again, must include training and support at all levels of your organization. It just doesn't happen by itself. It starts with an executive alignment where the executive team, those that are most responsible for the initiative, are part of the adoption plan and they own it. It then focuses on the middle management layer where most of the heavy lifting occurs. The middle management team is responsible for aligning those executive goals and objectives and executing. They're also responsible for coaching, developing, and holding their teams accountable for adoption. And finally, we focus on the users themselves. If you've built a good foundation around executive alignment, the sales management coaching, and the user training and coaching, all these components, by the way, take into account the reasons that we have 74% failure. And the way they take them into account is because they ensure that we have live workshops that build the foundation, the foundational knowledge, with weekly team coaching cadence to enable the execution and make it part of the ongoing routine of management, managing pipeline, and those things that matter to you most. Finally, providing the appropriate level of one-on-one coaching and end users to ensure that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the competencies to succeed. So finally, we're at the realization that there's a simple truth to all of this. Low adoption equals low value. The best way to get great adoption and value is to enable your core sales processes and enable those coaching conversations around quota attainment, pipeline management, win rates, and forecasting. We do that with great sales enablement apps. So the right apps around account planning, sales process, opportunity management, performance management, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you need to think about enabling that process that creates a simple, intuitive, valuable user experience throughout the entire organization. And finally, the decision to stay with Classic or switch to Lightning comes down to value. It comes down to value proposition. And if it's going to cost you more to stay, and that cost outweighs the cost to move, then you'll make the decision. So we've got a short overview to help you make that decision. In order to close the gap and ensure that we help you make that decision, here's how we think about it. The value to the client in a Lightning solution that's aligned to the sales process with nearly 100% adoption guaranteed. The number two of the solution focuses on the key barriers and adoption that we just covered. Number three in the Lightning adoption blueprint, which focuses on designing in adoption, building in the adoption, and ensuring great adoption processes followed with training and coaching and program that focuses on executives, managers, and end users. So a solution like that is going to cost you somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. This is going to help good end-to-end process design. Building a Lightning interface to align to that design and make the transformation from Classic to Lightning somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. And then finally, the adoption program. It's going to be based on your organization, their level of adoption, and truly your appetite for the kind of adoption and value realization you're looking for. It can range anywhere from $300 to $700 per user. Ultimately, the decision is based on whether your investment will help you realize the value that you've got in mind for your transformation. Any questions or comments?